Welcome to the lesson. Today, we are tackling a big question for any company starting with SAP S/4HANA: cloud versus on premise. What's the difference and why does it matter? Have you ever used Apple's iCloud to back up your photos instead of saving them only on your iPhone or Mac? Think about that for a moment. iCloud means Apple's servers store your data and handle the heavy lifting, whereas keeping everything on your device means you manage it yourself. Similarly, businesses like Apple face a choice when running software like SAP S/4HANA, run it on their own servers on premise or use it via the cloud. In this lesson, we'll break down what on-premise and cloud deployments mean in the context of SAP S/4HANA and how they differ in terms of cost, control, flexibility, and more. By the end, you'll understand the pros and cons of each option and why a global company such as Apple might lean towards one or the other to manage things like airports production planning or iPhone sales data. Ready to demystify these concepts? Let's dive in. On-premise, often just called on-prem, means the software is installed locally on a company's own computers and servers. Imagine Apple setting up a massive data center in Cupertino or across its retail locations where all the SAP software runs internally. In an on-premise scenario, Apple, the company, would buy and maintain all the servers, storage, and network equipment needed to run SAP S/4HANA. They'd need space, server rooms, electricity, cooling, and IT staff to keep it all running. Apple's IT team has full control over the system. They decide when to upgrade the software, how to configure it, and can customize the system extensively to fit Apple's unique needs. It's like owning a house. Apple can renovate or extend it however and whenever they want because they own the whole thing. Typically, on-premise software is purchased via a big license fee upfront, a capital expense, and then annual support fees. For example, Apple would pay for, say, 1,000 SAP user licenses at once and then pay yearly maintenance. This is analogous to buying an expensive Mac Pro outright and then just paying for occasional repairs or upgrades. All data resides in Apple's own data centers. Apple's team is responsible for securing it, firewalls, backups, disaster recovery. For a company protective of its secrets like Apple, which fiercely guards product designs, having data in-house might sound comforting. However, it also means responsibility. Apple must ensure hackers can't break in and that systems are backed up in case of failure. On-premise SAP S/4HANA is the traditional way many companies ran their ERP software. It offers control and customization, but also requires a lot of effort and resources to manage. If Apple chose on-premise, they might customize the system to deeply integrate with proprietary Apple manufacturing robotics or custom software, and they could delay software updates until they are ready, important if Apple has lots of other systems to adjust. But Apple would also carry the burden of keeping the system hardware up to date and secure worldwide. Running SAP S/4HANA in the cloud means the software runs on SAP's or a cloud provider's servers, and Apple, the customer, accesses it over the internet, usually via a web browser. It's like using a service, similar to how you use Gmail for email instead of running your own email server. In a cloud scenario for SAP S/4HANA, specifically SAP S/4HANA Cloud Public Edition, which is a software as a service, SAP manages the infrastructure. Apple wouldn't need to set up servers. SAP or the cloud provider SAP partners with takes care of all the hardware, data centers, network, and backups. Apple's team can focus more on using the software, not maintaining it. Think of it as renting a supercharged computer in SAP's data center. Apple's users just log in and everything is ready. Subscription model. Instead of a big upfront purchase, Apple would subscribe to S4HANA Cloud. This means paying a monthly or annual subscription fee based on usage, for example, number of users or amount of data. It's like paying for an Apple Music subscription versus buying a bunch of CDs. You pay as you go and you always have access to the latest songs. For SAP, this means Apple's costs are more predictable over time and spread out. Automatic updates. SAP S4HANA Cloud is continually updated by SAP. SAP rolls out new features and improvements, often quarterly. Apple doesn't have to perform the technical upgrade themselves. SAP does it behind the scenes, usually during agreed downtime windows. This is great because Apple always gets the newest capabilities. For instance, if SAP releases a new analytics feature or a new compliance report needed for finance, it shows up automatically. However, it also means Apple must be ready to adapt to changes on SAP's schedule. It's a bit like how your iPhone automatically updates overnight, mostly a good thing to get new emojis and security fixes, but occasionally you have to adjust to a new interface. Standardization and best practices. Cloud versions of SAP S4HANA are typically more standardized. SAP provides pre-configured best practice processes. So Apple might find that a lot of the processes, say how a purchase order flows or how inventory is valued, come preset in a recommended way. There is less flexibility to heavily customize in the cloud. It's as if SAP is saying, we know the best way an industry like high-tech manufacturing should run, and we build that into the cloud system for you. Apple can configure settings like adjusting parameters in a template, but not completely rewrite the code. For Apple, this might mean adapting some of their internal processes to match SAP's standard. The benefit is faster implementation. You don't reinvent the wheel, but the drawback is less tailoring. Apple can't easily build a wildly unique process in SAP if the cloud doesn't support it. Accessible anywhere. Because it's cloud, Apple's employees worldwide, whether in California, an Apple store in Toronto, or a factory in Vietnam, all access the same system via the internet. This makes rolling out SAP to new locations much faster. Just create user accounts and go. It also supports remote work easily. For a global company like Apple, this is huge. Everyone connects to the same central system in real time. If Tim Cook wants a dashboard of global iPhone sales right now, the cloud system can deliver real-time data from all regions without delays. Now that we know what each term means, let's compare key differences in a straightforward way. This will help clarify why a company might choose one over the other. Imagine we're advising Apple on this decision. What factors would we highlight? Infrastructure and maintenance. On-premise means Apple builds the house for SAP, buying servers and maintaining them. Cloud means SAP provides a fully furnished apartment. Apple just moves in and uses it. On-premise requires Apple's IT to handle hardware upgrades, database tuning, and system backups. In the cloud, SAP handles those chores, much like how Apple handles iCloud server maintenance for users in the background. For Apple, this could free up dozens of IT staff who would otherwise be patching servers and troubleshooting hardware. Cost structure. On-premise is a large capital expense, CapEx, upfront, licenses, hardware purchase, plus ongoing costs for support and IT staff. Cloud is more of an operational expense, OPEX, regular subscription fees, which is cheaper, depends on many factors, size of deployment, how long used, and so on. Apple might simulate a 5-year cost. On-prem might look expensive at first, but after 5 years, the costs level out, whereas cloud is pay as you go continuously. One key advantage of cloud for a company like Apple is scalability of cost. If Apple suddenly needs to add 500 more users in a new distribution center, they just adjust the subscription, cost goes up smoothly. In on-prem, adding 500 users could mean buying new servers or licenses in big chunks. Customization. On-premise offers maximum flexibility. Apple's developers could modify the SAP code or build complex add-ons because they control the environment. Cloud is more restricted. Apple would use built-in extension tools and follow SAP's guidelines, no deep code changes. The benefit of limited customization is stability and easier upgrades. Since you haven't altered core code, updates won't break your system. The drawback is if Apple has a very specific process, say a custom way to calculate supply chain risk, they might not be able to change the cloud system to do exactly that. Instead, they might adjust their process or use an external tool. Implementation speed. Generally, cloud deployments are faster. SAP S/4HANA. Cloud comes with many pre-configured processes ready to go. It's like buying a prefab house. Much of it is built according to best practices. Just finalize and furnish it. On-premise is like building a custom house. You have to make a lot more decisions, possibly design customizations, and set up infrastructure, which takes more time. If Apple decided they want to get a new factory's ERP system up and running in 6 months, cloud might be the only way to meet that deadline because the heavy lifting, infrastructure plus best practice setup is largely done by SAP already. On-prem might take longer to procure servers and do custom configurations. Upgrades and innovation. In on-premise, Apple controls if and when to upgrade the software. They might choose to skip an annual update if they're not ready or wait a couple of years between major upgrades. Some companies did this with older SAP versions, upgrading maybe every 3-5 years. In the cloud, SAP pushes updates regularly. For S/4HANA Cloud, updates typically come quarterly. This means Apple will automatically get new features, which is great to stay on the cutting edge. For example, new machine learning features for finance predictions could come in and Apple benefits immediately. But it also means Apple's IT and users must continually absorb change. SAP does allow some flexibility, usually giving preview time and not breaking things abruptly, but the cadence is faster than on-prem. Essentially, cloud keeps you always modern, while on-prem can let you stagnate or schedule modernization at your pace. Scalability and access. If Apple runs on-premise and suddenly needs to increase system capacity, say a new product launch causing a huge spike in transactions or expanding operations to a new country, they must purchase and install new hardware and ensure global network connectivity to that data center. In the cloud, scaling is much easier. SAP, with its vast cloud resources, can allocate more power or space behind the scenes. Apple would just inform SAP or adjust their subscription. Access-wise, cloud is accessible from anywhere by design. On-prem can be made accessible via VPN or other remote access. But it's another thing Apple's IT has to set up securely. For a mobile workforce, imagine Apple's supply chain managers traveling between supplier sites. Cloud access from anywhere is a huge plus: security and compliance. This is a nuanced one. On one hand, some might assume on premise is more secure because the company, Apple, has full control and can physically secure the servers. On the other hand, SAP's cloud data centers are extremely secure, with dedicated security teams, encryption, and compliance certifications like ISO, SOC, and so on that even giants like Apple would respect. SAP can often invest more in security than an individual company can for one system. So it comes down to trust. Companies like Apple will evaluate if the cloud meets their stringent data privacy and regulatory requirements. In many cases, SAP's cloud does. SAP even offers options to choose data center regions and so on, which helps with data regulations. Compliance like GDPR in Europe or specific financial regulations is handled by SAP in cloud. They ensure the system conforms. With on-prem, Apple's IT must configure and manage compliance aspects. For instance, if a new regulation requires certain data to be masked or deleted after X time, Apple would implement that in their on-prem system, whereas in cloud SAP might deliver a feature or setting for it. In summary, on premise is control and customization with more responsibility, while cloud is convenience and agility with more standardization. Neither is absolutely better in all cases. It depends on a company's needs. A smaller company with limited IT staff might find cloud the only viable route. A highly regulated enterprise or one with extremely unique processes might still prefer on premise. Let's bring this home with our Apple example. Apple is a tech giant with operations spanning hardware manufacturing, online services, retail stores, and more. How do the cloud versus on premise differences play out for them? Scale and global reach. Apple might lean towards cloud because it ensures all regions get the same real time data and capabilities. For example, when managing iPhone sales globally, a cloud system would let an Apple sales manager in Canada and another in Japan access the same up to date sales inventory information without one central Apple owned data center having to support all connections. SAP's cloud would handle the traffic. Also, if Apple acquires a new company or opens a new distribution center, they could onboard them to the cloud SAP system quickly without waiting to install new hardware locally. Speed matters in the fast moving tech market. Control and custom IP. On the flip side, Apple highly values control and has some unique processes. For instance, Apple's supply chain and product introduction process for new iPhones each year is legendary and very secretive. If Apple felt that the standard cloud processes don't cover a particular proprietary workflow they have, on premise might seem attractive to allow tweaking the system. Perhaps Apple has a custom algorithm to allocate stock of new iPhones to stores based on pre orders. With on prem, they could build that directly into SAP's code if needed. Whereas with cloud, they might have to use side tools or wait for SAP to support such a scenario. Updates and innovation. Apple is always innovating on its products. It likely appreciates having the latest software as well. The cloud option ensures Apple's SAP system is never outdated. They'd get improvements like new analytics dashboards or AI driven insights as soon as SAP releases them. That could help Apple finance or operations teams continuously improve. With on prem, if Apple was too slow to upgrade, they might miss out on new features or have a big project every few years to catch up. Considering Apple's forward thinking culture, the idea of always being on the newest version via cloud could be appealing. Resource allocation. Apple's IT talent is precious. Would they rather have their top IT experts focus on maintaining servers and applying patches, or on more strategic things like analyzing business data and improving processes. Cloud frees up internal resources. Apple could devote those saved resources to areas that directly impact product quality or customer experience instead of back end upkeep. Hybrid reality. In many real world cases, large companies like Apple might choose a hybrid approach. They could use SAP S/4HANA Cloud for certain functions or divisions, maybe for standardizing finance and procurement across all offices, while keeping some systems on premise for other purposes, like a legacy manufacturing execution system tightly coupled with factory machinery. SAP also offers a private cloud edition, which is kind of an in between. It's hosted for you so you don't manage hardware, but it's a single tenant system that you can customize more, similar to on prem. Apple could consider that if they want the best of both. SAP handles infrastructure, but Apple can still have some unique extensions. There isn't public information on all of Apple's choices, but the important part for us is understanding the decision factors. For our training scenario, let's say Apple decided to go with SAP S/4HANA Cloud, public cloud, for its speed of deployment and global consistency, especially to manage things like worldwide inventory and financials. Apple's leaders liked the idea that SAP will handle the technical grunt work and that Apple will always be on the latest game changing technology. But they also know they'll have to adapt some of Apple's internal processes to fit SAP's model, a trade off they're willing to make for efficiency. In this lesson, we demystified the differences between on premise and cloud deployments of SAP S/4HANA. You learned that on premise is like keeping everything in house. You get total control and flexibility, but also the full responsibility of running the system. Cloud, in contrast, is like leveraging a service. You trade some control and a bit of flexibility for ease, speed, and continuous innovation delivered by SAP. We saw that a company like Apple would weigh factors such as cost, speed, global access, customization needs, and resource focus when making this decision. Let's review the key takeaways. On premises, you host it. More upfront investment, more control over customization and upgrade timing, but also the need to maintain hardware and security by yourself. It's suited for organizations that require deep customization or have strict regulatory constraints that they feel only they can manage on their own turf. Cloud, SAP hosts it. Subscription model, always updated, faster deployment with best practices built in. You configure rather than heavily customize. Great for companies wanting agility, lower IT overhead, and access to the latest features without delay. Impact on business. The choice affects how quickly you can adapt to change. In fast-paced markets like consumer tech, where Apple operates, the cloud option can provide a competitive edge by rolling out process improvements quickly across the globe. On-prem might appeal when a business process is a unique competitive advantage that off-the-shelf cloud solutions can't support yet. Bringing it back to Apple, by understanding these differences, you can appreciate why Apple or any big enterprise might lean towards a cloud approach for standard processes to gain efficiency, while perhaps retaining some systems on-premise where they need that special control. Take a moment to reflect on these questions. If you were in charge of IT at Apple, which option would you favor for a critical system and why? Would the priority be to minimize costs and maintenance by using the cloud, or to maximize customization and control with on-premise? Consider the risks too. What could go wrong if Apple chose the wrong deployment type. For example, difficulty scaling up during a big product launch if on-prem resources were limited, or conversely, losing a competitive edge because the cloud solution couldn't be tweaked to a unique Apple process. By thinking about these scenarios, you reinforce your understanding that the cloud versus on-premise decision is strategic. It's about aligning technology with business needs. In the next lessons, we'll assume a cloud route as we explore SAP S/4HANA Cloud's capabilities for Apple, but always remember why that choice makes sense and where the trade-offs lie.